Hi everyone, welcome to this week's video. I'm finally well enough to record again. I'm happy to be back, and I really appreciate those of you that have been kind enough to leave me a comment and to stick around here in the channel until I was well enough to be back with you. So today I decided to make a book video. You seem to like those, and I haven't had recorded one for a while, so I decided to share with you some of my favorite books for inspiration to make art. I absolutely love folk art, and these are the books that I refer to when I want to create some folk art inspired artwork. So I'll start with the first one that is probably my favorite. This book is called Imagine a Forest, and it's by Dinara Mirtalipova. This is a really lovely book full of tutorials. So for those of you that are not too familiar with folk art, is this type of naive art style with a lot of patterns and colors. And you can see here this lovely end paper here. That's more or less what folk art encompasses. So there's a lot of embellishments and details. So in this book she has a little bit about the tools that she uses and color palettes, and then it's divided by subject. So you have flowers, foliage and insects, birds and animals, fairy tales and mythical creatures, people and homes, decorative elements and lettering, then project ideas, and that's it. So it's a very complete book with a lot of lovely artwork by Dinara. She has illustrated also some other books with her style. I really like her artwork. You have here some examples with color palettes. I'm gonna quickly show you some of the contents in this book. So you have here, she teaches you from the beginning how to draw, because a lot of folk art is also symmetric in some sense. So you may start with a regular like geometrical shape, and then you go over it with embellishments and make it a bit more hand-drawn style. So you have a good few ideas about each subject, which she gives you, some variations, and of course you can follow her tutorials and then choose your own color palette, or just be inspired by her tutorials to create your own pieces. You have a lot of different types of patterns and embellishments. So what I like to use this book for is, if I stayed a while without painting and I don't want to overthink, I just take some tutorial from the book and I follow it as it is, but then this gives me ideas for later on to create my own pieces, because it's kind of like a memory muscle, you know, and then when you are out to paint on your own, it can be incorporated in your own style. So lots of lovely different ideas for many different subjects. You have here some mythical creatures and medieval scenes, castles. Look how nice this looks, this composition. So what I like also about her propositions for folk art is that even though folk art sometimes can be very symmetrical, her work starts with symmetrical or geometrical shapes, but then she adds the hand painted flair to it, which I appreciate. I find very charming in this style, because to be honest, symmetrical things kind of stress me a little bit. If I'm painting, you have to keep in mind that if you start in the symmetrical route, one thing out of place can throw off the whole painting. So I like that this is a bit more easygoing. For example, here you see you have some sort of symmetry, but they're not exactly the same, you know, if you really observe. So there's space for creativity and to take things a bit more loose in this sense. So you have here some patterns, lovely, with pomegranates, nice pattern, some ideas using stamps, painting on wood, painting on furniture. And this is Dinara. So this is really nice. If you are not familiar with folk art but you'd like to start, that's a good starting point. Then I have this other book which doesn't seem to be that easy to find now. I found in an online store here in Ireland, and it's called Creative Folk Art and Beyond: Inspiring Tips, Projects and Ideas for Creating Cheerful Folk Art Inspired by the Scandinavian Concept of Hygge. I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but here you have it. So this is a collection of many artists' works. Every artist has a few sections. You have all the usual section about materials. Then there's Flora Waycott. And here you have also some practice pages. I don't usually use practice pages in books. I like to keep my books pristine, but you can if you want. And here she has some ideas of objects, you know. You have her rendition here, and here you have space to try your own. You have a project for a garland. I may try this one, it looks very nice. A winter kind of garland. Then you have flowers. Here she's talking about symmetry. Here's an example of this symmetrical folk art, which you can also do with some extra help. You can use digital to make it symmetrical and then just transfer to your paper. You can use like a carbon sheet to transfer the design. You can use tracing paper to draw the other half exactly the same. There are some tricks to that. And yeah, you have a few more ideas here on patterns, how to fill shapes, more practice. It's a really hands-on approach in this book. You have this tutorials about projects, which can give you a lot of ideas. I absolutely love this. Look how nice it is. This is Anna Belfort, and I really like her style. I haven't lived through this book in a while, and I confess, apart from Flora Waycott, I forgot about the other artists, but I really like her artwork, and it looks like watercolors as well, so even more inspiring. Yeah, love these little shapes, flowers and horses. I've been meaning to paint a horse like this. I maybe should use this as a starting point. We'll see. Really nice designs. Very simplified, but very striking nevertheless. And here she teaches you how to do the symmetric design. How to make a little fox. Nice little projects. Some flowers, more practice pages, more botanicals, And here you have Marenta. Not sure how to pronounce her name. I'm also not very familiar with her artwork, but looks like there's some lettering, some more embellished hearts and borders. It's really nice, this type of drawing. It's something you could easily do with just a fine liner and paper to practice. So you can also create folk art without paint if you are in the mood. It has some examples here which are very useful. Examples of art journaling. Then we have Terry. I think this is the last section. She has some different approaches, warming up, making marks, a bit more textural. This looks a bit like naive art style. So what I find interesting about this book is that you get to see how different artists interpret the folk art umbrella, which has room for a lot of variation in style. It can be seen in different lenses depending on the artist and on the region they come from also, because folk art varies also from region to region. So this is a really nice bird by Oana Befford. Lovely. And this was Folk Art and Beyond. Now, the following two books, they are not about folk art per se. They are more about folklore, but they have illustrations that are in the same style. So at the same time that you are learning about different ethnicities folklore, you are also being inspired by the very lovely images in the book. So this one, they are both by Claire Cox Starkey, but this one was illustrated by H. I am probably butchering the names today. Let me know in the comments if I am mispronouncing them. This lovely end paper. And this one is called Lore of the Wild, Folklore and Wisdom from Nature. So you have here the contents of the book. So it's divided in animals, birds, insects, flowers, plants and trees, weather and omens. And you can see here in the illustrations the same type of style we've seen in the previous book, with many colorful images with patterns and embellishments. And then you have a bit of text, of course, for the different topics that the book covers, but like I said, it's also very nice to look at the illustrations alone. Birds, I love painting birds, and I love seeing bird paintings. I've been meaning to paint a magpie for a very long time, and it's so nice to see those. And I love crows also. So yeah, you have a lot of info. I personally like to read also about these things. I'm very curious about lore and folklore from different regions. I joined a few times the Folktale Week. I think it's around the second half of the year, and there's always some nice little tidbits to learn from. So yeah, I bought the book for inspiration, but also because I like the subject. So look at lovely people illustration, also very colorful, very bright and lively. I find it very inspiring. This sun is beautiful. I would love to maybe try to reproduce some of the artwork just as a master study. and I may do it. I have many images that really call to me. So it's a book that probably you will find maybe in the children's section, but I have a lot of books from the picture book section, so it doesn't deter me. I'm a grown-up kid. So this was Lore of the Wild, and now we have Lore of the Land. Now for Lore of the Land is the same author, Claire Cox Starkey, but this one is illustrated by Samantha Dolan. So this is about folklore and wisdom from the wild earth. And this is divided in forests, seas and oceans, mountains, hills and valleys, rivers and lakes, and wetlands. So more about region divisions rather than subject like in the other book. Like in the other book, it has some text explaining about the different topics. Like for example, here's talking about Germany. Here's about North America. So it's just little tidbits of info together with this very nice illustration. So it's not a very tiring book to read. Here's talking about Brazilian mythology, Tupi, which is First Nations indigenous mythology. I confess I didn't know about this one. I know about some other ones, but not this in particular. So I'm learning about my own country folklore even with this book, so it's very interesting. This one I knew, the Curupira, and yeah, it's fascinating actually to learn about other cultures, folklore, and look at this beautiful illustration. I really love it. And this is Hawaiian mythology. Very nice. This can be very useful for folktale week, like I mentioned. Even though it's not a very extensive book, I think there's a lot of interesting ideas for illustrations as well. So you have here the sacred mountains, giants, trolls, dwarves, mountain spirits. And like the other book, this one is also very colorful. There's a lot of different creatures and myths that I had never heard about, so I need to take some time to read through properly. It's been a while that I bought these two books, and I confess I haven't taken the time yet to read them from beginning to end, but it shouldn't take long because, like I said, it's just little tidbits of text. So this was the second book by Claire Cox Starkey. This is Lore of the Land. The first one was Lore of the Wild. The last book I have to share, it's a very old book. Actually, I'm not sure about the year it was printed. Let me check here. Yeah, it was first printed in 1974. So I got this off of Amazon as a used book. And that was because I saw somewhere in YouTube, I don't remember who I saw mentioning this book as inspiration to create art from. And I found it had some nice images, so I decided to look for it and I found it. It's also folk art, but focusing on American styled folk art. So, and my book came even with a little name label. Apparently it belonged before to Alice. Here you have the contents table, so it's divided by pictures, sculpture and decoration. You have a lot of photos in this book, a lot of text as well. I'm not sure I'm gonna read through all of the text, but I was more interested in the images themselves. So you have some paintings. which is quite particular and quite different also from the folk art we've seen in the previous books. It's a different concept of folk art, I would say. I would say this approach is more a kind of naive style of painting. But since we are in the topic of folk art, I thought why not to show different facets of the same topic. So you have a lot of different images, and it's quite endearing, I find, because they're not perfect, but I think that's what makes it kind of charming. And since I am not into realistic art, I am more attracted to this type of paintings, actually. This makes me think of Moby Dick. So I have some boats. This is a very large book, so I'll try to show you just a few things. This, you can see a lot of pattern and detail. Also here. There's a lot of black and white images, which, even though are not as lively as other books that we've seen, I find it can be sometimes good to have something in black and white, that if you want to do a master study, for example, you can project your own color palette onto it without being influenced by the colors of the painting itself. Here we get into sculpture, which you can also use for inspiration to paint from. It's a nice study also to learn how to depict light and shadow. For example, here, you know, in this horse. You can use it as a still life. Here you have some painting on wood, on walls, patterns and stencils. This type of embellishments kind of make me think more about the more decorative folk art that we've seen in the other books. So you see there are different elements to it, and if you like this type of art making, there's an infinite amount of ways to go about it. I personally find folk art also quite meditative. When you get into just repeating pattern, kind of makes you disconnect a bit from the final result and just enjoying the process, which is always good. So here you have some more objects, a lot of pattern and decorations. Some geometrical motifs and fabric, which I always love. I always love to see patterns in fabric, so quilting and things like that, it's really inspiring to me. This little scene here, I think, is a quilt as well. So yeah, like I said, this is an old book with images from real life objects as well as paintings, but I found it interesting as well to share. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you like folk art, if you have tried already, if you would like to try, if there's any other books that are good for the subject I haven't mentioned here. Let me know. I'm always curious about new books, and I hope to see you here soon. Bye!